从2014年12月以来，马来西亚政府出动了军队和警察，摧毁金马伦的菜园和粮食。这项计划称为象牙行动。
My name's Darren from Australia. Myself, I've been a farmer in Australia now for 20 years. No, I've actually never come across anything like this happening anywhere else in the world. Food and water are two things fundamental to the survival of a society. So I would view this, from my perspective, as a food security issue for Malaysia. And the government really should be encouraging as much local food production as possible. You wouldn't want to get yourself into the situation where you rely on another country for food. You can be too easily held to ransom, and you give away your sovereignty if you get rid of the ability to produce your own food in your own country. So I can't understand it as a farmer. I must admit I have seen some poor land clearing practices in Malaysia, but also I feel that a lot of the farmers approach it in a very practical and caring way, particularly the smaller farmers. And it seems to be the smaller farmers that are being affected in this operation. Similar would never happen in Australia. If there was a dispute over land ownership or similar, the government wouldn't get involved, and the government certainly wouldn't take heavy-handed action of destroying the assets of a farmer. That decision ultimately in Australia would be made by the court, which is quite a long process. Yeah, in Australia, if there was a land ownership dispute, whether it's the farmer has acquired the land illegally or legally or otherwise, it's not up to the government to take action. It's up to the court to decide on the situation, and if it went in favour of the government, then the government wouldn't be heavy-handed and destroy whatever infrastructure was on that land. The government would negotiate and find a solution, and that solution normally would be that the person that has been using that land would get the continued use of that land. Normally, land leased from the government in Australia is one of two leases. It will be a 49-year lease, or it will be a 99-year lease. The lease system here from an independent Australian farmer is that a year-by-year lease is purely a method of control. It's control of the farmer, and that control is fear-based. So it's fear that from any given moment you're going to lose your lease and lose your livelihood. And I think any government that uses the tactic of fear over any of its people needs to reconsider the situation. Yes, in Australia, of course, the situation's different. Most farmers own their land, but if it was this particular scenario, then the farmer would be granted a lease. There's a couple of things that are considered in Australia. One is what would be called prior use. So if this land has been used for several number of years or generation after generation, then that prior use of the land is considered very strongly by the court. There's also another saying that we say that possession is 9/10 of the law. So the farmer is there, the infrastructure is there, the land is being put to good use with food production, and so that should continue. The only thing that may happen is the government might watch a little bit closer and maybe put in place more if they were concerned that there was negative effect on the environment. Then they would put in place maybe some regulations, some tighter regulations, to have better control over environmental practices of that land. But the land certainly wouldn't be taken from the farmer. All I can look at it is from an outsider's point of view. It sounds like there's a lot of small farmers being affected. I have seen poor land clearing in the Cameron Highlands. From my understanding, that's been predominantly done by larger companies. So I would say there would be much more environmental degradation done in that particular instance than farmers taking small pieces of land every year or every 2 years. I would say it's a violation of the farmer's right to grow food, particularly if my understanding is we're talking second and third generation farmers.